then in the end it just becomes another heavy burden we're carrying with us on top of all the other commitments which we have in our daily life. And so what happens is often that gradually people just begin to relinquish it and relinquish until they end up with nothing. So it's much better to just focus on something which is meaningful to you, a practice which really speaks to your own heart, and do it. Not too long, but do it. Every day, no matter what. It's you're holding on there. It's like you're climbing up a rock and you've got this very slender string, but you're holding on to it. And then, in addition, make your daily life your practice. Because really the Dharma isn't just meditation or chanting. It's cultivating all these various qualities like patience, loving kindness, compassion, ethics, and so on. And learning how to be more mindful, how to be more centered, how to really care about the happiness of others beyond one's own satisfaction. And for this, daily life is a wonderful practice. Your family, your workplace, people you meet, people you like, people you have problems with, people who are nice to you, people who are difficult. It's all part of our practice, right? So with the Tong then, if you're already doing many other things, then maybe just do it occasionally, But it's just so that when the opportunity comes, you know what you're doing. You don't have to sit there thinking, trying to remember what it was. So do it from time to time, and as the opportunity comes, if we meet with suffering in any beings, we automatically will slot into this practice. It will seem natural for us to do it.
Saya terbantu sekali dengan saudara sejakma yang pada bertanya dalam bahasa Inggris ya. Tapi untuk yang tidak atau belum yakin menanyakan dalam bahasa Inggris, kami persilahkan sekali lagi. Jangan malu-malu, mumpung kita ada dua guru besar, silahkan Anda tanyakan. Ada yang mau bertanya di belakang sana? Ya, silakan, tolong mic-nya. Oh, yang di sini dulu, habis ini ya, Pak yang di belakang, silakan. Nama dan pertanyaannya langsung.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Yuyun. The situation when you were a little girl and your mother prayed to take away your pain, most people will say that God hears your prayer. Earlier when I tried to practice what you told us to do, I can't help myself from thinking that who am I to do this? I'm only an ordinary human. I don't have any spiritual power. Who am I to help others? I can't even help myself for my own pain. Should I also think that Buddha will hear my prayer, Bodhisattva will help me, or is it really depending on our own power to bring in the darkness and bring out the light? Thank you.
Well, first, I believe that we all have spiritual power. Every last one of us, every single being has spiritual power. The problem is that we ignore it. Each one of us within us has tremendous power for the good. But unfortunately, we forget. We get carried away with mundane things, material things, worldly things, and we don't pay attention to our spiritual life. So if we paid more attention to our spiritual life, things would go better all the way around. But of course, we also will still encounter obstacles. From a Buddhist perspective, we can't expect someone else to take away all those obstacles. We created certain actions in the past, and our actions ripen in the present, and will ripen in the future also. But this is not something to feel negative about, or to blame anyone. We have no one to blame. We created the actions, now we get our results. So in a way, I think that it helps us to face the problems like that better. Because instead of blaming others or blaming God, we can deal with the situation. Deal with the situation with wisdom, loving kindness, and compassion, which is an opportunity to practice. And this is how we grow spiritually, right? By facing those obstacles and using those as opportunities. So from a Buddhist perspective, it's not as easy as waiting for somebody to come along and take away our problems. Even the Buddha cannot take away our problems. If he could, he would have done that already, right? Buddha is full of compassion and kindness. So if he could, he would lift all of our sufferings. But that's not how it works. That's not how the universe works. It works according to the law of cause and effect. We create the causes, we experience the results. There are ways of mitigating the effects. So every time we go for meditation, for chanting, for charity events, we're creating causes that offset the negative actions or unwholesome actions that we've created. So in this way, we're purifying our actions from the past, and the results will be less intense, or maybe even go away altogether. So that's, I hope that answers your question.
Oke, silakan pertanyaan berikutnya yang di sebelah sana. Ya, tolong Mike.
Good day, my fellow masters. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is William. Well, I agree that compassion can destroy any kind of walls, like ego, selfishness. But I believe the hardest part is, we have the most hardest wall to break is hatred. Well, for this thing, I would like to ask your point of view that how can we overcome this wall of hatred to practice in compassion? That's all. Thank you.
So, of course, hatred, anger, aggression is one of the three major poisons of the mind, of which another one is greed, grasping, attachment, and the underlying problem is inherent not knowing, our inherent ignorance about who we really are and who others really are. I have to add here that around the world, people often ask, how can I rid myself of anger? How can I rid myself of hatred? Because anger and hatred make us feel uncomfortable and people don't like us. But very, very few people ask, how can I get rid of greed? Which is actually a much more difficult negative emotion to rid ourselves of, because greed feels nice if we get what we want. You know? I mean, if we long for ice cream and somebody hands us an ice cream, then greed feels good. So we don't want to get rid of that. And therefore it's much more difficult, much more underlying. But hatred and anger are very obvious and cause pain to ourselves and cause pain to others. And so, ironically, it's much easier to overcome. Of all the three negative emotions, the easiest to overcome is anger and hatred. So, I mean, there are many books which have been written on this subject, including from a Buddhist perspective. You could read Working with Anger and so forth by Venerable Children and others, which give many different techniques. But one of them is the fact of why do we feel hatred towards somebody? You know, and how to replace that negative feeling in our mind stream by something which is more positive, right? So the good news is that we can do this. And even neuroscientists have now proved that it's not as difficult as we think to replace anger and hatred by a positive emotion such as loving kindness and compassion. And I think a lot of hatred and anger, which we think is directed at other people, is really directed at ourselves. And for this reason, the Buddha said that when we practice loving kindness meditation or compassion meditation, we start with ourselves. Because if we are really friends with ourselves, if we really feel at ease and at peace within ourselves, we won't be so disturbed by others. And so, although it's very helpful and useful to do loving kindness meditations, compassion meditations directed to all beings, and also to recognize that one of the most important qualities needed on the path to awakening is patience and tolerance, and we cannot develop patience and tolerance if we don't have anyone who upsets us. Think about it. If everybody is nice to us, then it's easy to be loving to people who are lovable. Anybody can do that. But if everybody's always nice and loving, then how are we going to develop, genuine patience and tolerance and forbearance, which is a very important spiritual quality for us to develop. So instead, therefore, of being resentful of somebody who does bad things or is difficult for us and creates obstacles, we can be grateful. We can think, oh, thank you so much, you're so obnoxious. Oh, finally, somebody who's doing something I really don't want them to do, and so I shall place you on the top of my head as my spiritual teacher. Right? So, also that, just thinking of somebody who's difficult, instead of being angry with them, being grateful for them for being so horrible, makes us laugh. And then that also helps to diffuse. And then loving kindness. Loving kindness first towards oneself, and towards people we care about, people we're indifferent towards, and then people who are difficult for us. As I say, it's easy to be loving to people who are lovable. Anybody can do that. But the challenge for us is to genuinely feel an understanding. When people do bad things to others, it's because they themselves, inside, there's something not right. Right? If people are really content and peaceful and at ease, they won't do anything to hurt others. If they do, it's because something inside them is not right. They're not happy inside. So therefore, instead of getting more upset because of their conduct, we can try to, imagine I had that mind. Imagine I did what they did, said what they said. How would I feel? That would be horrible. And then we feel empathy and compassion in replacement for feeling angry and upset, because our hatred towards others doesn't hurt the others. Who is hurt? It's ourselves. And so we do to ourselves what only our worst enemy would wish for us. That's pretty dumb. So if instead of reacting by being upset and angry, we take it on the path and transform it into our spiritual practice, then we are the victors. We have gained the victory, even if outwardly it appears that we are the losers. We are not the losers, they are the losers.
Psychologically, we have all of these methods for dealing with the problem of hatred. And another idea is to look at the problem philosophically and look for the causes of the hatred. I can think of two straight away, one of which is fear and one of which is jealousy. And both of these are easy to deal with also to the Buddhist teachings. So why are we afraid of people? In the United States right now, there are so many killings of black people. Why? A lot of it is out of fear. Fear of someone who is different from ourselves. And the other one, jealousy. A lot of hatred is rooted in jealousy. We want what the other person has, and we feel angry that they're getting it and we're not. But that one's also rather easy to deal with if we use the method of rejoicing in the good fortune and the good qualities of others. So when something good happens to other people, instead of feeling jealous and hateful toward them, we can rejoice that they got the new car or the new job or the nice partner or whatnot. And that will act as an antidote to resolve our hatred. So looking at the causes is also a good idea. Of course, all rooted in the self-cherishing attitude, which is rooted in ignorance, comes back to the same problem.
Thank you. Ada lagi silakan yang di bagian belakang mungkin. Kalau angkat tangan, oh masih banyak ternyata ya. Tenang, kita masih bisa panjang waktunya. Silakan. Di sini mic-nya yang bagian depan, ya depan dulu ya. Kalau ada petugas yang di belakang nanti bisa dia meng-capture yang di belakang. Silakan nama dan langsung pertanyaan.
Okay, my name is Yuri. I want to ask if this practice on the world for the living being. The second is, should we do this practice for the disease person who suffer before the death? Thank you.
Can you read the question?
First, is this compassion practice on the world for the living being, or should we do this practice also to the person, the deceased person who suffer before the death? Thank you.
Well, of course, one can do practice for those who are dying, and even after they have died, for the period in which they are still trapped in the intermediate state, one can certainly do the practice at that time. After a certain amount of time, usually said to be 7 weeks at the utmost, then they have gone into a new life. So it's not so important. But just at the time of dying and the time just after the death, then it would be a very powerful practice, I think.
Yes, I agree. And also after death, wherever they have taken rebirth, we can also generate compassion and kindness. I mean, just because they're dead, they've gone somewhere. So in whatever state they may have taken rebirth, we can also generate loving kindness and compassion. So it's a win-win.
Oke, berikutnya yang di belakangnya tadi ada. Ya. Ya, thank you. Silakan.
Thank you. My name is Resmi. I feel that practice compassion is so amazing, and I think it's beautiful if we can practice it together with many people, and how to motivate others to we practice together, because I feel that practice compassion makes me feel like it's so beautiful, and my happiness is to see other people happy, and I think this life is very beautiful, and I want to practice it together. Thank you.
Well, that's what we're doing here, right? By coming to the temple, by going to the Dharma Center, by getting together with like-minded, compassionate friends. That's exactly what we're doing. So that shows that it's important to come to the Dharma Center, it's important to come to the temple, not just when a famous person comes, but all the time, regularly. So that we have a regular practice of compassion. And then by carefully choosing the people that we hang out with, right? Carefully choosing Kalyana Mitra, or spiritual friends, then we can be in an atmosphere that nourishes our compassion all the time, right? Then we spread that compassion to more people in our families, and in our circle of friends, and at work, and then it just grows and grows and grows. I'm so happy to hear this. Thank you.
Oke, saya baru diingatkan panitia. Ada satu pertanyaan lagi karena kita sudah mau selesai. Mohon maaf saya tahu Anda punya banyak pertanyaan. Last one, the last question please. Silakan.
Thank you. My name is Johannes. Saya mau bertanya. Saya 3 tahun 4 tahun ini lebih mendalami Buddhist. Saya sudah menemukan bahwa saya mau memakai jubah, tapi ada beberapa yang saya berat untuk melepaskannya, yaitu keluarga. Tapi setelah mendengar dalam podcast ini, saya makin yakin bahwa belas kasih itu harus lebih universal. Karena dengan memakai jubah, saya pribadi bisa lebih fokus mendalami Buddha dan bisa mempraktekkan belas kasih secara general atau ke seluruhnya. Tapi kita tahu belas kasih itu kita tidak boleh lupa dengan keluarga. Saya berat dengan keluarga, terutama dengan orang tua. Apa yang harus saya pilih? Apakah saya harus tinggalkan keluarga saat ini? Tapi saya juga tahu kalau saya menunda-nunda, saya tidak tahu umur saya sampai kapan, atau saya takutnya kalau saya terlambat, ya sudah selesai, sudah bisa mengikuti ajaran fokus ke Buddha. Terima kasih.
Pertanyaannya apa Pak?
Jadi minta pendapatnya, apakah saya harus meninggalkan keluarga untuk memakai jubah sekarang ini, tapi dengan posisi saya takut durhaka.
I think this is, since we do not know you or your background, I think this is something which you need to discuss with the Sangha who are here, and discuss your situation, and then they will give you their advice. They understand the situation here far better than either of us do.
I think first that the aspiration to become a monastic is really positive, very wholesome. Just having that thought of becoming a monastic, either in this lifetime or in future lifetimes, the thought alone creates a good merit. Going from that aspiration to actually becoming ordained is a long way, a long journey. For me, it took 13 years. Right, to get from wanting to be a nun, actually I wanted to be a monk. So I had to get used to the idea of being a nun instead, and then it took me 13 years to get to the monastery. So I would recommend practicing like a monastic for about maybe a few years. Going to retreats, taking as many teachings as you can. You can go to a Buddhist college and study Buddhism and live like a monastic for a few years. And see how you like it. So try it on. Because a lot of people have a romantic vision of monastic life that doesn't necessarily match the reality. You don't become a saint the minute you shave your head. We still have our same mind, right? We still have to deal with a lot of the same problems. And so by practicing as a monastic, practice the 5 precepts. I took the 5 precepts first and practiced with them for 5 years before I went to the 10 precepts. And then I practiced the 10 precepts for 5 years before I became a bhikkhuni. So I think a gradual path is a good idea. And see how you do it. In addition, there are temporary ordinations available in Thailand and even here in Indonesia, where you can become a monk or a nun for a short time. I think it's valuable. It's not the same as taking a lifelong commitment to be a monastic, but it does give you a taste of the monastic life, so maybe you'd like to try it.
Okay. Thank you, Kak. Kita di penghujung acara, sebelum kita tutup, saya ingin menyimpulkan sedikit apa yang sudah kita bahas pada siang hari ini. Luar biasa sekali. Jadi meditasi belas kasih atau compassion yang dijelaskan oleh para guru kita di sini seolah-olah mengajarkan kita untuk perhatian atau mengungkapkan rasa perhatian kepada pihak lain, tetapi sesungguhnya yang lebih penting dari meditasi itu adalah bagaimana meditasi tersebut memberikan latihan untuk mengikis ego kita. Jadi sesungguhnya meditasi ini lebih berguna untuk mengikis ego kita, menghilangkan 3 hal yang menjadi akar dari ego: kebencian, kemelekatan dan keserakahan, dan juga ignorance atau kebodohan karena kesalahan persepsi. Latihan ini tadi dijelaskan tidak harus dipaksakan, lakukan senyaman dan sesuai kondisi Anda masing-masing, dan terus ditingkatkan karena itu keseharian yang akan kita latih. Ingat, juara bulu tangkis olimpiade itu nggak langsung juara, dia harus butuh latihan panjang untuk juara bulu tangkis. Sama seperti kita, untuk enlightenment kita juga harus banyak latihan, mulailah dari yang paling nyaman sampai Anda kemudian bisa jadi master.